right, gentlemen and ladies. One lady. All right. We'll keep this pretty brief. We know you guys have been here probably longer than us. So we'll first of all, we'll reconvene tomorrow at 2 p.m. We were able to work through a number of different issues today regarding our system. We can't say that major progress was made in any way, but there was some progress on some of our system issues. Obviously enough for us to come back at 2 p.m. tomorrow, and we'll continue to work through as long as we possibly can and as hard as we possibly can to see if we can get a deal done. But we're not going to get ahead of ourselves at this point. We'll continue to remain focused on some key principal items in our system that have to remain there in order for our players to agree to what is already a reduced percentage of BRI. So we're making our decisions and thinking through things with that perspective. And obviously it's been a long day and night, but we'll be back tomorrow at 2, and we'll see where we can go from there.
Can you guys?
Good, Howard.
Can you give any definition to the progress made on the system issues, specific items, or quantify the progress?
Go ahead, Derek.
No, we'll withhold specifics at this point. I think we obviously don't have a finalized deal until that point comes, and because of how many items in our system are interrelated, are connected, obviously to the big number being the split, but there are also some nuances within the system that impact each other. And so until we can further define what a final system would look like, it's tough to get into specifics at this point.
Is it possible to agree on terms of the system without knowing what that number is with BRI, what the split is?
It's somewhat difficult, Chris, but we've been trying to negotiate and conduct discussions within the context. We sort of have an idea, obviously within our own minds, and probably the positions that we push are consistent with those thoughts. So that even though we may not talk in terms of a specific number, and I'm sure Adam and the NBA are conducting themselves the same way, although we know that their number has been at the 50 mark. But what you try to do, you try to negotiate, understanding where it is you want to be. And so a lot of the concessions or trades that you might be inclined to make have to have some connection to your understanding of what your ultimate number is.
Was there any progress made on the BRI? Was it discussed?
It wasn't discussed.
Not at all?
No.
Billy, why do you think it was that you went back to system today after BRI last week?
Well, I think that everybody realizes that the first 2 weeks of the season have been canceled, and I think the NBA was approaching the point whereby they were going to feel compelled to make another announcement with regard to whether they're going to cancel additional games. And if there was any hope of trying to recapture the lost games and be able to complete a full season of 82 games, then there had to be a way to get back and talk. And so we had some preliminary discussions on Friday of last week and over the weekend with Adam, and ultimately we reached some agreement with regard to getting back together, agreeing, to park the numbers and to talk about the system, to see if we can make any progress there.
You're still hopeful of 82 games then, Billy?
Yes, I assume that if a deal can be achieved, say between now and Sunday or Monday of next week, I think it's possible. It's going to be somewhat stressful because of probably the need to do some back-to-backs, as we did in 1998 when we came out of the lockout.
Has David told you guys that 82 games is still possible?
Well, I mean, we obviously don't know that and can't guarantee that. It's part of our discussion at this point just because of a forced function of the calendar. But there are obviously several things that will impact these negotiations based on certain dates. So we haven't been promised or guaranteed that if we get a deal done by a certain date, that we'll get a full 82-game schedule. But I think to Billy's point, the likelihood, or at least the chance of that happening, although it may be slim, still possible if a deal is reached, within the next 4 or 5 days.
Does that become part of what's kind of the trade-offs right now too, Derek, that, getting 82 is important enough that maybe different concessions are made by one side or the other because of that, just trying to preserve that?
Well, I think, we've always operated from the perspective of, trying to get a fair deal done as soon as possible. And obviously, as we move into the latter part of October and the early part of our training camps and preseason and regular season have already been impacted, I think we've always come to the table with the approach of not relying on arbitrary or artificial deadlines or waiting until a certain point to get more serious. I think we've been serious about trying to get a deal done from the beginning, and we'll stay focused in that regard.
The last time you guys were on the system issue, they were at a certain point on a luxury tax system, and you guys were at a certain point. Can you describe at all what type of discussions happened along those lines, and any movement closer together on that front?
Well, I think, obviously our luxury tax system and rates are a big part of our discussions. As I stated earlier, until we can, say we've agreed on a deal, we can't get into specifics about, what they've proposed, what we've proposed. But for sure, our tax system has been a big part of all of our discussions related to the system. They'll continue to be a part of them. And, sometimes that's what makes it tough to try and really finalize the system in a complete way, because without knowing what the final split will be, sometimes it makes it a little tougher to work through a tax system. But we're making the effort, we're trying to do so to keep this process moving, and we'll keep going at it that way.
I think that this time, hopefully not this time tomorrow, because I hope I'm not sitting here at 3 a.m. tomorrow morning or Friday morning. But I think depending upon how much progress we make tomorrow, we'll be in a better position to be more explanatory and definitive about the specifics of the deal. So that while we're not prepared to talk about it tonight, we may be prepared to discuss it tomorrow.
The last time we talked, you were explaining that they had given you a take it or leave it on the 50-50 before they would discuss these systems issues. But now you've discussed them. What's your understanding of how that came about?
I just think it was just probably a changing of minds and a softening of position. Obviously, the press of time, the concern about the mounting damage being done to the league if we don't get things up and running. And probably, I just think a lot of the pressure that's brought by those of you who are in the room as you continue to write these stories. And I think maybe members of the public start to get turned off. There's just a lot of factors, and I don't think it's any one thing that you can turn to. But I just think just the general buildup of pressure, I think probably persuaded them. And maybe I think even my interview with Bill Simmons, where I said that we talked about them parking a number and then being able to discuss it. It made sense to do what we're doing.
Take one more.
Is there any plan to bring more people into the room tomorrow, or is it going to be the same small group?
Can we let Maurice answer a question? Maurice, can you tell us?
I'm good.
Okay. Derek?
No. Yes, we'll lose a key member of our staff. Our economist, Kevin Murphy, has more than one job, so we'll lose him for really good family reasons. But basically, we'll have our same small group.
If I could just ask, when you guys stress repeatedly that you can't say you have an agreement until you have an agreement on everything, that would suggest that there's been at least some understanding or some meeting of the minds on some level. Is that an accurate read on what you're saying, or is it?
No, I think it's a little bit of a reach. Obviously progress has been made. We're coming back tomorrow, but to try and measure it, to try and put a gauge on how much and what it means, I think it's a bit of a stretch. Our system is very complex, and there are several factors that impact one another, and until we can really say, like Billy stated, maybe tomorrow or Friday morning, we'll be able to explain in more detail. But right now, it's a little premature to get into gauging, what type of progress is made.
Are you
All right,
optimistic
guys,
yet?
listen, it's 4 in the morning.
That's another